Hello, this is Paramjit Singh. Thank you very much for stopping by. So, what sort of story you woke up to today? Is that the same story you slept in? And the reason I'm asking this question or proposing this question to you is that we live through stories and our stories continue to change. We have stories of victories, defeats, we have stories of happiness, anger, we have stories of or related to traumas, oppression. We have stories of oppressing others. We have stories which we have told multiple times or lived vicariously multiple times throughout our life. And by doing so, we have owned up, we have metabolized those stories. We also have stories which have been told to us by others. Stories by people who don't like you, and then they weave up a narrative. Stories by the people who love you, and they weave a different kind of the stories. That begs a very interesting question. So if we have or we live through multiple stories, then which story is the correct one? Because if we continue to live the stories, then our life and its direction continues to be directed by those stories. In some ways, we tend to think in a dichotomous way. We tend to think that certain stories are true, other stories are false. And that's a very typical Aristotelian Western way of thinking, where through the principles of excluded middle and the principle of non-contradiction, Aristotle mandates that something can be either true or false, but it cannot be both. And there's no possibility for any third alternative. But we don't experience stories like that. You might have experienced that the stories you tell in one point of the day, you experience it differently than when you tell it or experience it on a different point of the day. And that brings us to a slightly fuzzier way of thinking about stories, the narrative we live in. The Eastern way of thinking offers a very interesting way to work through the stories or with the stories. It says that a story or narrative can be true, it can be false, it can be both, and it can be neither. Now, if you think about these four sides, at least four sides, it gives you a huge swath of possibilities the way you can work with the stories. Because if we learn to learn with the stories, if we learn to work with the stories in a wholesome, healthy way, then our life can come out of the traumas and the oppressions and the victimhood, and we can own up a different story. So if one story can set the directions of your life, and if you find out through self-exploration or self-inquiry that that story is not the correct story to follow, then we can change our story. We can re-narratize it. We can weave a different narrative around our experiences. So whenever next time you come across a story, or if you have a story you're currently living in and you find it is oppressive, it is traumatizing, it is unwholesome, it has been foisted upon you by others, see if you can think about that story from these four lenses and see where it takes you. Because a reimagined story is a reimagined life. Because if something can be either true or it can be false or it can be both or it can be neither, That gives you a whole lot of instruments to work with your narrative. So next time when you are stuck with a story, whether that story is yours or have been given to you by someone, see if you can deconstruct that story. See if you can reimagine it, considering that what you think is true may not be entirely truthful. Until next time, thank you very much for stopping by. If you find this conversation useful, please kindly join me on my channel. I would appreciate your presence. Thank you for stopping by.
Please subscribe to the channel, like and share. Thank you.